Welcome to the presentation, Managing a Project and Overcoming Writer's Block. We're all going to hit writer's block. That happens to me, and I have a lot of experience, a lot of practice. That happens to a lot of other people who spend hours and hours and careers worth of writing. We all get writer's block. So number one, understand that it's normal. So let's talk about how to make a project manageable to help deal with writer's block when it shows up. First thing to do is envision your project as a set of parts rather than a whole. In other words, think about how you're going to engage one specific piece of getting your project done rather than just looking at it as 5 pages or 6 pages or however many pages it is. So thinking about that will really help you think about it in terms of steps and kind of sketch those out. I personally use a free application called Evernote to do that with my projects, to put things in different notes in different projects, and you can find a lot of information on that. Some people like to do hard copies, but find a way to break it up into pieces, and then you can work on it in parts and try to get things done with it. Maybe you want to hold off on doing your introduction until later. Maybe you know that you need to do your research in one block and then do your writing in another block. Think about it in a series of steps, and that way you can get certain parts of it done more quickly than others. You also want to keep your goals manageable too. Again, I speak from experience. Something that I love to do is give myself way too much to do in a given amount of time, and we all do that to ourselves too. So we need to be careful about that and just try to accomplish a series of reasonable goals. Listen, what can I get done tomorrow? What can I do? I'm going to have an hour to work. What can I accomplish within that hour? Creating a calendar also helps so that we don't run into things at the last minute. Again, word of advice here. I have seen many students who are very capable of writing and who are decent writers, whether they believe it about themselves or not. They turn in really terrible pieces of writing, not because they're terrible writers, but because they don't manage their time, they don't set reasonable goals, and they try to get everything done in a very short amount of time. And of course it's sloppy. The same thing would happen to me if I tried to do that with, anything in my house, making a repair or, mowing my lawn. Anything that I am trying to accomplish way too much in too short of an amount of time is not going to go well. So you need to think about that and make things manageable. Start off with things manageable, and that'll make it a lot simpler and easier when you do run into issues. Next, get in your zone. Find what's going to work for you. And we've talked about this in other presentations as far as brainstorming. The same applies for doing your writing. Find what works for you. What works for you may not be what works for your roommate or for your parents or for your siblings. Find what works for you. And that might be setting aside a time early in the morning to work. That might mean finding a specific schedule, but find something that will work for your own brain and for what you need to do. You also want to limit distractions. Again, we work better different ways. Some people have to have music going or they can't function and get anything done. Other people have to have it totally silent. So find a place, find a way to make that happen. If you're having a hard time finding that, again, send me a note, schedule a phone call with me. I'll try to help you strategize. Sometimes I can come up with campus resources to help you. If you're far off campus taking this, even then I can come up with some ideas. Our local Plymouth library has an adults only room that is set aside to be very quiet. So if you need specific quiet time and you're anywhere near Plymouth, maybe that's an option. We do have places on campus you can do that as well if you're close to campus. You also want to prioritize your writing time. And it's really easy sometimes with our different projects we have to do. And I know most of you have a million things going on. If you're a full-time student, of course you do. If you're an athlete, we know that there's a lot going on with that. Many of us work, and some of us are only part-time students, but we're working. All of us have friends, family begging for our attention. So you need to think about ways to prioritize your writing and realize, here's what I need to get done now. Here's what is most important that I need to get done first, and then fill in the gaps where we need it. When you do encounter writer's block, then you need to know how to deal with it. And like I've said before, start projects early. Plan that you will sometimes run into writer's block, and we also get many other surprises that life throws at us. So just assume that things are going to happen. Assume your computer is going to melt down at some point. Assume that your dog is going to get loose and run all over the neighborhood. Assume that your toilet's going to overflow and you have to plunge it for half an hour. Assume that these things are going to happen and start your projects early. Then when you encounter writer's block, you're going to hate that I say this, but sometimes you just have to push through it. And I said that in a very emphatic way. I'll say it again. Push through it. A mediocre or poor draft, I can work with that. And I tell students over and over, you know what? Even if it's a really bad draft, I can give you feedback on that and we can move forward. Or you can take it to the writing lab and get feedback on it and move forward. But I can't give you feedback and I can't give you points for pieces of work if I get nothing. So something that's very rough, which is why we call it a rough draft, is better than nothing at all. And some writers work a lot better going through the revision process, and that really brings out their best. A lot of writers who consider themselves very bad writers or say, I can't write, that is not true. What is true is they need to focus on the revision process to get their best work. There's also something called a zero draft. This is an interesting strategy you can read in the book, and I recommend you read through that. It's, for me, not something that works terribly well for me, but I know some students who really, really enjoy doing that. Again, you're not going to turn in a zero draft as your final product. That will not turn out well. Again, trust me, I've seen it happen. But go ahead and do that, and that goes back to the push through it. Sometimes you need to just get something done, and you're not happy with it, and that's okay. So when you encounter writer's block, there are some things that you can do to get through that by stopping to go take a break, by going off and reading other things about it, by going and doing more research, by focusing on another part of the paper. Those things are all very helpful as well. And sometimes you just need to stop, take a break, and come back to it. So just plan that it's going to happen. And when you plan ahead and you persist, then usually writer's block, you won't find a magic cure for it, but you'll find ways to manage it and deal with it. And I like the last part that they have in the book. It says reward yourself. So rather than staying up all night playing video games and then wondering how you're going to fit your paper into that, save that as your reward. Find ways to reward yourself for getting the job done.